Hi, welcome back to another edition of Inside Great Lakes Sailing. I'm your host, Greg Norman. We're lucky enough to have with us today the Liam brothers, both Luke and Liam, talking a little bit about their quest for the 2024 Olympics. That's the Summer Olympics in Paris, where they want to sail a 49er. It's a skiff that is an Olympic-class boat that you kind of have to see to believe. It looks a little bit like a spider, but it's a very cool-looking boat, and they are starting a campaign for that quest to try to make the Olympic team. Two young sailors from the lake who have great background, great sailors. One's in high school, one's in college. You're going to hear all about the 49er, hear all about the Walz brothers, and we're going to do that in just a couple seconds. We'll be back quick as we can. We are talking with the Walz brothers, both Liam and Luke Walz. This is Greg Norman from Inside Great Lakes Sailing for another edition of our show. First of all, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you.
We are going to be talking about the 49ers. We're not talking about the gold rush from the 1800s. We're talking about sailboats. And specifically, you are attempting something kind of unusual. So, Liam, let's start with you. What is it you're trying to do?
So we're starting up an Olympic campaign in the 49 class skiff. Our goal right now is just to get a boat and get training so we can get up to speed with other guys on the U.S. team.
When you say the Olympic world, explain what that means.
So that would be the Olympic circuit of World Cup sailing and the people who participate in the quad leading up to the Olympics to try and qualify. Right now there's about 6 teams on the U.S. in the 49er class who are all gunning for that one qualification spot, and they just battle it out until one of them gets the spot.
So this isn't exactly the Olympic team itself, the program, like you'd be sailing in Japan this summer.
That is the people sailing in Japan, although the U.S. didn't qualify this summer for the 49er. So we'll have a women's team, but we won't have a men's team.
Okay.
What we're working through is the Olympic Development Program, and we'll just be able to go train Long Beach, Miami, San Diego. We'll be able to travel around the country and train with other people on the ODP team.
Explain what the pipeline for the Olympic sailing program is.
So the pipeline is, it's like a pipeline to develop youth sailors into the Olympic sailing slot. Usually it's those who have gone to Youth Worlds and done that kind of stuff, but we managed to get noticed and get in that zone. So
not different than a minor league baseball player who goes to A, works up to Double A. In skiing, it's a development where you might ski the NORAM, which is the North American Junior Circuit, if you will, from that perspective. So I get that part. Now that's a pretty heady stuff for a college guy. You obviously You obviously sail for the Grand Valley sailing team, which unfortunately in the recent week has taken a step aside with all of the coronavirus that we're dealing with from that perspective. You're taking it from a different perspective. You're a high school student in terms of Luke, so thoughts on all of a sudden you're kind of battling with some pretty good guys up there versus a bunch of high school kids from Lake St. Clair.
Mm-hmm. So I'm a senior in high school at Grosse Pointe South, and I'm not really super in the loop on this whole Olympic thing. Liam's working it out because he has a lot of free time on his hands, and I'm just kind of rolling with what he shows me, and I'm pretty excited. He brought the idea to me months ago before Christmas, and we thought it was a great idea. We wanted to jump on it because I would love to have an opportunity to race with my brother.
Well, we'll get into the specifics, but I guess the first question I want to ask is: you're sailing with your brother, and it's one of those. Is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? You're at that point where maybe you're sort of growing out of the adolescent. It's my towel, it's not your towel. Kind of thing. So working with your brother at this point, I think, has got to be a pretty cool thing.
I think it's a great thing. I mean, he was trying to find a crew for a long time, and then finally just said, "All right, screw it. It's you. You're here. We're together. We have a pretty similar schedule. We know what we both can and cannot do, and it works out perfectly because we get along very well."
Explain where you are with your talents. Talk a little bit about your sailing backgrounds, and then where does that fit in the level of competition that you're going to sail against?
So I come from a laser-heavy background and collegiate sailing, but towards the end of my high school sailing career, I started sailing F-18 catamarans, and the cats, even though they're not a monohull, they function similarly with, it's a lot of apparent wind sailing, really hot angles, really fast boat speed. It's just a joyride. So I kind of got into it there, and I really like the idea of the 49er. The 49er is there's a huge skill gap from the F-18 to the 49er. The 49er is a hard boat to sail, but I think if we put the time in, we'll be able to get up there. It'll be a lot of work, but we can get it.
Tell a little bit about your background, sailing background.
So I came from a pretty heavy 420 background. I do a lot of that and travel a lot with the high school sailing team here at South. We do a lot of team racing and national events, so that's a lot of fun. But it's like Liam said, I've always been kind of interested in the 49er, and when he brought the idea to me, I just jumped on. It's a great idea.
A question in my head. Does laser or 420 background prepare you better for 49ers? And I say it from the 420s actually having a cockpit.
I don't think either really prepare you that well. They don't really translate. The skiffs are super tippy. There's a lot of different rules to them. Windward heel upwind is more common in the skiffs than, you don't really do that in the lasers and the 420s. The angles are a lot different, the way you tune the rig. The whole boat's just set up differently. I suppose laser would prepare you tactically if you're helming, but so would the 420, and you're crewing in the 420, so you'd get wire experience.
Yeah, this is usually in the Great Lakes. There's like a chain of command with boats. So you start off in the Opti, and once you get a little older, you can go to a laser or 420, and that's just the way you kind of progress.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Why?
I think the Opti is just a good starting point for youth sailors. A lot of kids hate the boat, but I think it's underappreciated as a boat. It's a bathtub, but everyone's sailing in a bathtub.
It has a blunt bow.
So
I get that it's an easy boat to sail; it doesn't sink, and I get those kinds of things.
It teaches you a lot of good skills right off the bat. I mean, you can tune the rig. There's mast rake adjustments. There's a variety of control lines: out haul, sprit tension, bang, and you still have to play with those. I think it's a good learning boat. I think kids just need to learn that, it's not always about, the fast boat. Sometimes you just got to learn to go slow in those
So there
boats.
sort of needs to be a progression like any other sport. Well, let's talk about the skiff. The 49er is a boat that was basically introduced to the world in 1999.
Yeah.
It was a 2000 Olympic, I'm not sure if it was a demonstration boat or if it was an actual class boat.
It was a class boat. The McKee brothers represented America. I'm pretty sure they took third there at Sydney 2000. The 49er as a boat was kind of developed by Julian Bethwaite, an Aussie designer. It came around after the 18-foot skiffs took off. They were pretty, high tech. Really cool to watch. I think in the mid-90s they had a lot of competitions with them. And the 49er developed as kind of a hybrid between the Aussie 18 and the International 14 skiffs, and we got this true one design because the other two classes are box roll.
Right. As you can see above us, there'll be a picture here of the actual boat itself sailing. We have some views. It almost looks like a big, huge butterfly. It's a big spread out. Explain what a skiff is. I don't want to be stupid, but explain what a skiff is and how it applies to this, and then maybe some of the idiosyncrasies of the boat itself.
So by definition, a skiff is just a low freeboard, flat bottom boat. The flat part of the boat is the back. The front is pretty pointed. The back is really flat for planing purposes, and it planes pretty well because of it.
Most people are going to know what freeboard means, or not freeboard, but maybe explain it to the rest of us.
So freeboard would be from the water to the deck. So like a keel boat would have really high freeboard usually, but the 49er is pretty low to the water. So when we're both trapped out on the wire, we're riding maybe 6-8 inches above.
So get an idea with this. Lots of trapeze, lots of hanging over the edges.
Yeah.
What's the What's the technical issues of sailing a 49er? I mean, sailing it well, as you've already mentioned, it just sort of takes time to get in sync with being able to understand it.
Yeah, it functions kind of weird. The boat just, you know, it always wants to go fast. You can't heel it because the wings are solid state. A lot of other skiffs have tubes and netting, so when the wing dips in the water, it's not as bad as an effect. But these are, it's a wing, so it hits and you're going over. So that makes it really tricky to sail. You got to keep it pretty much dead flat. You're working in a range of heel when you tack and jibe.
Can I assume as we're learning to sail the boat, we spend more time in the water than sailing?
It's like swimming lessons.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you could be catapulted pretty well from one side to the other if I'm
yeah.
completely right.
If you pitch pull, you're going for a bit of a ride.
Is it a boat that you wear a helmet with?
Some people do. I did a couple days when I was training in Oak Cliff last year. Just because I was sailing the Nacras the day before, and I had a bit of a rough flip in there when my crews got essentially hung in the bridle wires of the boat. And after that, I was kind of like, okay, maybe I'm going to wear a helmet for the next couple of days.
What's the length of a 49er?
16 feet.
And what's the sail area?
Oh man, I'm mind blanking on that.
100 feet, 150 feet, square feet?
Probably around.
So
yeah.
Disproportionate to what normal boats would look like, right, in terms of sail
Yeah.
area?
Mm-hmm.
Which is the point of fast, which is the point of getting more air and more power. Am I
Yeah.
correct?
Yeah.
You as spinnaker on a 49er?
Yeah.
Okay, so
Jennifer.
the regular complement of sails, like any other boat we have.
Yeah.
Okay. I asked the question because I just don't know. I'm just thinking if you're really hung out on one side on the trapeze and you get flung, that's a pretty long area you get smacked to from the other side, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Because I always said, is it sailing when you're wearing a helmet? Is it really sailing? I don't, that's always a joke, but I get the point.
Yeah.
So at the moment, you don't have a boat.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have, you're working on financing, and we're going to have that conversation at the moment. So, Luke, what's the next, where are we right now, and where are we? I know you're going to work a little bit this summer with different things, going different places, but talk about no boat, money raising, and those kinds of things.
So right now we're in our fundraising stage, and really what we're trying to do is to spread a wide net and raise kind of like attention to our campaign. So like we have a lot of things going on with GoFundMe, and we have a website that we put up a couple weeks ago, and we're really just trying to get the word out and raise awareness.
These are boats that are in the $30,000, $35,000 range cost-wise.
Brand new, yeah.
I'm assuming that this attempt to raise funds is not raising $30,000, so you try to probably raise less. So the question becomes, how much do you need? And give me a time frame, because are we looking closer to, obviously looking to 2024 Olympics kind of thing?
Yeah.
So this is a build-up for 4 years from now.
Yeah. Actually, most of the guys that go into the class, it's roughly an 8-year. They do 2 quads before they actually make it to the Olympics and really start campaigning. So we're in the range of 24, 28, 2028 being in Los Angeles, and 2024 being in Paris, but the sailing will be in Marseille. So we're in that range. Our initial goal right now is 10 to 15K for a second-hand boat. I have been practicing in the boat for a couple training sessions at ODP trainings, and we'll be doing more of that this summer.
Explain the acronym ODP.
Olympic Development Program team.
Okay.
Yeah.
You have a boat for 15, but like any other sport, it costs money to travel, it costs money to train. I would think it would almost be double that, because a trip to LA is going to cost you a couple $1,000s.
Yeah, so we'll be filling out grants. There's a couple of foundations, St. Francis Skiff Foundation, Skiff Squad, Oak Cliff sometimes, and other places are willing to help out teams with grant money if you fill out a really long form and ask for help.
There's money available. Is there a benefactor in this area that's
so we filled out a grant request to the local yachting association, DRYA, and they're very interested in helping. Barb Seski has been incredible with us. Her and Tom Vickers are working to help fundraise. Last I talked to Tom, he said he was trying to set something up at each club for a fundraising opportunity.
Because this is a tens of thousands of dollar endeavor, you really can't do car washes and cookie sales, bake sales for these things. So it takes serious money to be able to get to this point. Which goes back to my original question. If you had all the things you needed and you could sail tomorrow, where would it put you on either the regional or the national map in relationship to the quality? Would you be a last place team? Would you be a first place team? Would it be a matter of practice? And the reason I'm asking the question is, if somebody's going to fuel this, what's the outcome?
So
What's the realistic outcome?
at the moment, if we were to have everything minus practice time, we would easily be bottom two.
I've never touched
yeah,
it. Like, I've never stepped foot in a 49er before. So.
I've sailed a bit in the boat, and it's a trick. There's a steep learning curve. If we had a couple months of practice, I think we could hit mid-fleet easily at like the Cork OCR regatta, so between the Canadian and American teams. But at the moment, if you were to just throw us in the boat, there would be a lot of swimming, a lot of figuring things out. So
Money means opportunity. I think you'd agree with that. The lake we have, we come from an area, maybe you sort of explain to the folks looking, where are we in terms of competitiveness nationally from the Midwest, the Great Lakes, as compared to the East Coast, the West Coast? Where do we stand?
I think you kind of have to break it up. Looking at Detroit and Chicago as like keelboating hubs, I think we have super strong offshore and keelboat sailors, and it shows. Don Riley, Stu Arga, we have some really strong guys there. And actually, high school wise, I think we're either the second strongest or one of the strongest divisions for high school sailing. Outside of that, it's a bit patchy for junior sailing programs. We have some really top kids and some kids that are treat it more like summer camp. It really depends on the coach's enthusiasm and the kids as well.
Do you think the racing world around here, even the casual racing world around Detroit, know the caliber of high school racers we have?
I wouldn't say they do. No.
Why?
I don't think so.
We don't really get the word out that much. Most of our high school doesn't even know we have a team, but every other week we're going to like Maine or Annapolis and just kind of.
Why is sailing, and I say this while we're doing a show, why is sailing sort of the poor second cousin? And it's not a poor second cousin, it's a second cousin. I say poor from the standpoint the publicity from it. Yet there's world-class sailors on this lake that sometimes we forget. And it just doesn't, it seems like a very insulated world. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
How do we get the word out? How do we get the word out for you guys that there's two guys here that are trying to make their way up to the Olympic level kind of thing? If this was other sports, we would be jumping aboard and seeing what we could do a lot faster, I think, then. Sailing just seems to be sometimes gets lost. That's a fair estimation.
I think the general public, people who don't sail, don't really understand how sailing could be a sport, and when they do watch it, they may not find it interesting. I feel like in order to enjoy watching sailing as a sport, you have to be a sailor. Mostly with slow boats. I mean, if you watch Sail GP with the F50s, I think that's pretty much fun for anyone. But I think spectator-wise, it's kind of a hard sport to understand, so most people don't take interest in it. And outside of that, most people just look at the cost and are kind of scared off from that.
I think watching football is fun. I think watching basketball is fun. I think watching golf is boring. I think watching sailing is like watching paint dry. And because I think, and I understand that the GP series is what it is, we're just not used to seeing other sports. When I see badminton or pickleball on ESPN 9, I turn the channel, and I think to some extent that happens with sailing as well.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think people know. I think
Yeah.
that's part of the discussion. And sometimes even on this show, I'll ask silly questions. Well, I'm semi-new to the racing world, so I think that's part of that discussion from that standpoint. We've got unbelievable tools in terms of harbors, in terms of boats, teachers. We have guys in Detroit that are national level guys. You can draw upon those from experience, and maybe talk about some of those local guys that have sort of given you guys a hand.
Youth level or?
Both ways.
Yeah. So Bruce Burton has actually been a huge help for us. He campaigned for the Olympics in the early 80s, 80 and 84 for the Flying Dutchman class with his brother. So we were put in contact with him, and he's helped us with, really looking at the numbers and what we're going up against. And the numbers are scary. It's not cheap to run an Olympic campaign, but he's been really encouraging, and I appreciate everything he's done for us so far.
He's also, I believe, still part of the Olympic sailing committee, if I'm not
Yes.
mistaken.
Yeah, and he was president of U.S. Sailing.
And he's a local Grosse Pointe guy,
Yeah,
which also helps immensely.
yeah.
Who do you go to, Luke, for when you want to learn something other than from your brother? Maybe some folks you learn from.
Well, I know you said not really my brother, but he's normally the go-to because like travel regattas and things we're doing with the high school team. If we mess up and maybe there's a protest, most of the time our team calls Liam and like we get the rule book out. But we have a great coach at Grosse Pointe South, Christina Noland. She just started coaching our team just this past fall, and she's been a great help to all of us. So she's pretty great.
Talk a little bit about mom and dad and where they fit into this campaign, because I'm assuming that there's a certain amount of campaign opportunity to get money from mom and dad, whether it's just room and board in your case or college, but talk a little bit about mom and dad and how they fit into this.
They're very encouraging. Usually, money-wise, there's a separation. If it's money for a boat, it's usually on us to find the funds for that. They'll help out a bit, but I think they like to encourage finding your own way. It's really helped. I bought my laser. I bought my second laser. It's been helpful. So taught us a bunch of good lessons. But yeah, they help with like regatta fees and logistics and stuff. But outside of that, it's usually on us.
Moral support,
Yeah.
Yeah.
to say the least.
Yeah.
So we'll go from there. You're at Grand Valley. What are you studying?
Environmental studies and sustainability.
I know eventually you want to be a pro sailor.
Yeah, that would be the
If
goal.
you don't end up as a pro sailor, what's the fallback?
Working with water quality. I think that's a huge issue that we're facing right now. I mean, I've noticed it in the past couple of years, like the amount of trash I see floating through the lake is pretty bad, and I think the lakes are starting to get pretty dirty.
Obviously, you're in high school, so I want to ask
Yeah.
you if this are career problems, but where are you headed next year?
I'm not really sure yet. I have until May 1st to decide, but I'm looking either somewhere in-state like U of M or East Coast like Roger Williams, just for the sailing aspect, because I think that'll make a big part.
You guys are both involved in the junior sailing program, and the reason I want to talk briefly about the junior sailing program, not ours here at Crescent, but just the junior sailing in general. Are we on the right path with junior sailing? And I say this because sometimes I think that we could build it larger with numbers. I'm going to start over. 5, 4. I want to talk briefly about junior sailing because I think there's issues that could be improved if we talk to each other. And I think having spent a year in it this past year, last year, that I think there's some disconnect sometimes from club to club and more importantly from boat to boat. I think we approach opties differently than we approach, I'm not saying that there are differences, but are we on the right path with juniors? And I say it knowing that numbers are dwindling.
I think the numbers are dwindling because in recent years it's kind of been building up to this. I think as of a couple months ago, whenever the last DRYA junior meeting was held, when they revised the schedule and changed up how they want to function as for the summer sailing schedule, I think it's going to fix a lot of things. We're spending more time practicing now than racing, and I think that's really crucial. It's like studying for a test. You got to iron everything out, and you got to be flawless by then. I think for the kids, we have to get better staffing. We really need to look at who we're hiring, and I think a lot of the clubs have been looking into that lately, and I hope numbers will start to go up as a result of it.
Numbers for kids that age are dropping just because of population.
Yeah.
Guys your age and older aren't having as many kids as they might have had in my generation. We use Sailing 101 as the sort of Bible for beginning sailors. Is it adequate?
The coaching book 101, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think a lot of it is more like recovery and rescue stuff, if I remember correctly. And it's just basic drills. I think it works really well for learn to sail kids, but outside of that, I think level 2 coaching is a better one to get into for racing.
In a 2-hour high school practice, how much free sailing do you do?
Not much, really. Majority of it, we just
Race.
race and begin with tacking drills, work on our jabs, tacking, rolling, a lot of stuff like that.
If you're the first one out of the harbor, though, you usually get a couple minutes of just...
What is it that you like about sailing? And the follow-up to that would be, when did you know, I asked this John Walton in one of our first shows, when did you know you were hooked?
To answer that one first, I think it took a while. I hated sailing the first maybe year and a half. I really don't know why I kept coming back. I think it was because I was angry that I wasn't good at it, and I just wanted to like prove that I could progress. That part of the reason why I like the 49ers, because the first time I sailed it, like I
lost.
as a dust. I really like
Right.
it was a hard boat, and I was like, I don't like that. I want to be able to sail it, and through the weeks at training, I progressed, and I'd like to continue progressing in that boat. But yeah, it was a couple years before I was really hooked with sailing. But I guess that kind of shows I was sort of in a way hooked from the get. Yeah.
How about you? Do you know? Are you hooked? Number one.
Yeah, I am now.
And can you remember the moment? Because I think if you're obsessed, what you're doing right now takes obsession.
Yeah.
I believe. You can't be obsessed unless you're hooked.
Mm-hmm.
And you can almost go back. I'm 66, and I can go back to the day when I was hooked on a couple things, skiing being one of those. I can tell you the day it happened, and this is 50 years ago.
Yeah.
So it hasn't changed.
Yeah.
For me, I guess I started out with just like 1 year of learn to sail in like the Opti, and I hated it. It was the worst experience in my life. Every day I would just complain. I hated it so much. So then the next year, I didn't want to go back, but then I got put into the recreational program. And then at that point, I realized I'm sailing the slowest boat on this lake, and it sucked. So I tried racing one day in a 420, and immediately I knew, okay, this is what I want to do because it's fun, it's exhilarating. You go
Adrenaline.
fast, you win,
Yeah.
and you learn. And I realized the Opti's slow, and whatever I was doing before, the Flying Scot, they're slow. They're just, lack of a better word, stupid boats. So I realized I was hooked because I just wanted to go fast and get better. So.
Does this height difference between you two, because you're about 6'3", and you're not 6'3"?
No, I'm 5'11".
So
and a half.
my question is, does the height different? I'm asking the question because there's a weight factor on the 49er of what you want to stay, and that's based on what some conversations you and I have had.
Yeah.
Does the height difference matter, and are you in the perfect weight situation? And talk about the weight for that boat.
So each combined weight to start off with should be about 340 to 360. Most people shoot for 350 to 360. That's what we're shooting for.
Mm-hmm.
Both crews should be around 170, 180. I'm currently 166, and you're 181.
90 actually.
Oh my
90.
gosh.
I haven't checked in a long time, but I checked myself
But
2 days ago.
I'm gonna have to build a little bit of weight, and you might have to drop some. But
Or just stay at your weight and let it get bigger.
yeah. But usually they're around the same size.
Why is that? Why is that weight? Just because of the way the boat's built?
Yeah, and usually you're not. You're both always hooked in. It's not like F-18s where like one, the crew starts out trapping first, and then the skipper gradually comes out. Similar to the NACRA and lighter air. NACRA 17 being the Olympic cat. But in the 49er, if it's light, you're both hooked in. If it's heavy, you're both hooked in. It's just gradually moving
So
out.
we were saying earlier, it's got a very large sail area, so it's the weight that really is
Yeah.
crucial. And height too, I guess, because on the wire you need to get leverage.
It's going to sound like a really dumb question, but is it in a trapeze that you would have on a boat? Are all trapezes for the same weight? And I'm saying that because, like, small, medium, large, extra large, is there a stronger trapeze for a guy heavier than a guy lighter?
No, they all pretty much carry the same weight unless someone uses weaker line that isn't rated to
Okay.
hold weight. But yeah, they're made to hold any range of weight.
Mm-hmm.
The reason I'm asking you questions, I don't know, number one. Number two, I think of my weight and I look at you two, I'd have the extra size, the extra large size, but that's really not the point I was trying to make. The 49er is, how fast can a 49er go in, say, 10 or 12 knots of wind?
I think in 10 or 12, they're probably upwind. They're probably averaging around 6.5, maybe 7 if you really get the bow down and hauling. Downwind, you're easily going 12. The top speeds downwind are 20 to just a little over 20. Top speeds upwind in a race is usually 11. Sometimes you see guys crack 12, but that's about it.
What's the hardest part about sailing the 49er? What's the single thing that would give you the most trouble over and to have to learn as a team?
I think straight line, just getting the boat in a straight line is actually pretty easy, but maneuvers are pretty tricky. It's even though it's got a really wide back end, it's not very stable. It's pretty narrow up until the back end. So when you do a maneuver, you really have to be in sync. It's all about timing, and just being off by a couple inches or a couple seconds is the matter of upright and upside down. So I gotta say, jibes are a big struggle for me to learn actually. But tacks and jibes were up there. Barroways are tricky too.
Mm-hmm.
All right, I guess the last question is that on every boat there's a skipper and there's a crew. In this case, it's a brother and a brother. Is there a boss and an employee, or is it a mutually exclusive relationship?
I'd say it's mutually exclusive. The crew does a lot more of the work, so I guess you could say I could be bossing Liam around a little bit.
Yeah.
So you're the skipper?
Yeah. Well, I'm the crew.
You're the crew.
Yeah. I think we need the more weight with the crew.
Yeah, the crew is more of the workhorse. They're putting the speed on. I'm just steering the boat in the right direction. So my job is more tactically, where are we heading? What's the wind doing? Where are the shifts? Where are the puffs? How can we connect them? So I'm doing the tactical stuff, driving as well, and trimming jib. And then downwind I would take the main.
Yeah.
And upwind you're trimming main, and he's really like checking sail shape, and our heel angles and whatnot. And he's just boat speed, boat speed, boat speed. He's constantly trying to get the boat going faster.
To wrap this up, you have a website which you
Yep.
can look at right now and see the name up on the screen, and you
Okay.
also have GoFund.
Yeah, GoFundMe.
GoFundMe, GoFund, a GoFundMe
Yeah.
account.
Yeah.
My mouth is not working today. I'm not sure why. Both of those will be up on the, so you can take a look at them. You've already had, I know Todd Jones from Thomas Hardware has already donated some money.
Yeah, he's always a huge help. He's just the nicest guy around, and he's always willing to help anyone out. So he's donated, and he said he was willing to help us with any rigging and campaign needs. He's the guy to go to.
If this were to go at the distance, where do you see yourselves in 2024?
I think we could be competing with the national team. I think that's a pretty achievable goal at the moment, assuming we get the boat. Yeah, I think if
That's
we get
the
the
big
boat,
first step.
the big first step. If we get the boat, I think we're on the right path.
We just
with
have to
a
get the ball
training
rolling.
schedule
And to end the interview, this is the opportunity for the crew.
Mhm.
What's the thing that irritates you most about the skipper?
Not telling me stuff or not
Oh,
listening.
yeah.
Because I feel like a lot of me bossing him around is do this to make my job easier. Like, head up so I can do this.
When I crew, I hate when people don't count down
Yeah.
maneuvers. So you say, sometimes on the 18s I run tactics, and sometimes you'll say, oh man, we really need to jive, and it'll just go. I've had a couple moments where
The
on
skipper with
airborne.
the high school team does the same thing. He doesn't tell me anything, but I end up doing it on time, and I'm like, "God, you idiot, what are you doing?" And he's like, well, you did it, didn't you? It's like,
Yeah,
it's
communication is key.
It's interesting. I asked you the question and he answered it.
yeah.
I know.
Maybe that's the issue you got to think about. Guys, thanks so much for your sitting down and having a conversation with us. This will be, I think, real enlightening for folks who maybe don't understand the level of racing that's on this lake and where it may take us. And I think that's something that we need to explore a lot better. So best of luck this summer.
Thank you.
And,
Yeah,
appreciate
thank
your
you.
time. Thank you for watching Inside Great Lakes Sailing. Again, my name is Greg Norman, your host. And we hope we got a lot out of watching the Walz brothers talk about their campaign for 2024 in Paris. I think the 49er is a boat that I'm not sure I'd want to get on at this point, but one that will certainly be a challenge. If you want to help them along the way, both their GoFundMe information is on the site, as well as the website that you can take a look at from what we've put up on this show. So for the Walz brothers and everybody behind the scenes, we'll look for you next week when we have another edition of Inside Great Lakes Sailing. Have a fun and be safe and enjoy the week.